Rabbi, you remember last week's discussion?
Yes.
I heard a shiur by Y.Y. Jacobson, which is not exactly your Ashkafa, but yes, it's not the rabbi's Ashkafa.
He's a Chabad, Rabbi?
He's Chabad.
I'm just going to keep talking. I'm just going to get a little water.
Yeah. So it was the story about Kriyat Yam Suf,
Yeah.
and he was giving a speech, and he spoke about what was said about the Kriyat Yam Suf by a Brisker Rov, about Datan and Aviran.
The what of Iran?
Datan ve'Aviran.
Oh, Datan and Aviram, okay.
And for them, it was given the second split of the Red Sea. And this was said even by Rav Diskin, which I think is near to your Ashkofa.
Okay.
So Datan and Aviran merited the second Kriyat Yam Suf because they were so-called kapos in the time of Mitzrayim, but they refused to give makot to the Jews that did not work hard enough. So the discussion was last week about a Jew being a Jew nevertheless, or a Jew which is not so kosher.
Not so kosher, right?
And this is where we had a different outlook, if you remember.
Yeah. No, they were punished by the, the thing with Korah when the earth opened
Yes,
up.
but
They were chutzpahdik, they were the worst Rishayim. Terrible, terrible Rishayim.
They were chutzpahdik.
Why are we trying to...
They were chutzpahdik 4 times.
Yeah, so why? See, my point in Russia is a Russia, whether he's Jewish or whether he's not Jewish. If he's a Russia, he's a Russia. And he gets punished.
But
Why are we trying to whitewash, make him into something
we are
that...
not whitewashing them.
So what's the
We
machlokes?
are just saying that Yiddish and Neshoma, even if he is a Rasha, remains Yiddish and Neshoma.
Well, I mean, that's something that is debatable, let's put it that way. And also, in what sense? In what sense? Not every Jew has a chelik. There are certain Jews that don't have a chelik. And
I see you are reading a piece of paper there.
Yeah, I wanted to discuss this with you. Do you mind?
No,
Oh,
but this is exactly what I'm speaking about.
What?
The sin and the sinner
Yeah.
are 2 different things.
Oh, you read this article?
No, I just read the according to Torah.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to discuss. I think it's connected. I think it's a very fascinating discussion. So I brought this, I read it. In fact, I discussed it with my students yesterday. And then I thought maybe we'll talk about it over here. Because this is a very intelligent audience. You know, people here are really, into ideas and so forth. It pertains. I'm not going to get into the whole story with was it Chaim Walder. You've heard of Chaim Walder,
Yes.
okay? I didn't speak about it. I'm not here to speak. I don't know it's a terrible tragedy. Let's put it this way. And this is not this article comes into play because of, and I'll show you how. All right, so you know that he was been accused. He committed suicide. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy.
Over his son's grave.
Over his son's grave, right? And I assume there must be something to it, but apparently he did tremendous good, okay? A very effective writer of books for children, all right? But at the same time, see, it's an amazing thing. I told my students, it's an amazing thing. Maybe there's something to what you're saying in this one, that people assume because a person does certain, and I'm not talking about him now, okay? Let's just look at history in general. Yeah, this guy's a wonderful person, and he's so nice, he's so considerate, he does such good things. So you can't imagine, this same person can have another aspect of personality. He can do the worst atrocities.
A different life.
Or in this life. I mean, I'm not going into the different life stuff. You want to believe that, fine. I'm not attacking that. It's just not my framework, and that's not necessary. What we're talking about makes sense in this world, whether we do believe in a different life or you don't believe in a different life. I don't want to get into that controversy. You have a right to believe if you want to believe. In this life, a person can have a different aspect to his personality, okay? the students I was talking about are women students. I said, women are very vulnerable to someone who's very smooth talking and nice and sweet, and they can't imagine. This same person can be the most abusive individual when he's out of sight. He can be very, very abusive. Now, even the Nazis, some of the Nazis could be very sweet people, wonderful people, but they had that other aspect of their character. They could do the worst kind of atrocities you can't imagine to children, to babies. The sadism has no limitation. Okay, so I'm saying this. I don't mean to compare him to a Nazi, but he, as far as I don't follow the details, I don't follow the stories. I do know that he was accused, I think, of also kind of exploiting women, too, married women. If I'm not, you guys probably know the same facts. Married women, and even this is the story, I don't know if it's true, having relations with them, which is that means to say that they have to get divorced. I mean, if a Jewish married woman has an affair with someone, not her husband, so al pi din, according to din, she can't live with him anymore. She has to get, that's the union of the sota. The sota is suspected. She's suspected because the husband warned her, don't be alone, yichud, don't be alone with so-and-so. And she violated that. She was. So we have Adam that there was yichud, but they don't know whether there was actual relations, or not. So the husband has to divorce her because she's suspected of adultery. That's adultery. But we used to have, in the time of the Beis Mikdash, they had the Mei Hamarim, they had the waters, the bitter. If she insists that she's innocent and she didn't do it, and her husband agrees, they both have to agree. So she puts herself through the humiliation. It's a very humiliating kind of a thing, okay? And they tear down the top of her dress. Her hair is let out loose, and she walks through it's a very humiliating experience. But you know what? I want to make this point over here. V'niksa v'nizra zera. You know that, right? V'niksa, if it turns out
she gets a baby male.
Yeah, if she's guilty, she's subjected to a very, very terrible death. That's the punishment. Okay, her thighs and full, like a terrible, terrible death. And what about the guy?
Also him.
So you know your stuff. You're learning in yeshiva. Huh? You learning in yeshiva?
No, I know the Rabbi Sprecher.
Okay, you did a good job. Okay, Shkayach the Rabbi Sprecher. But what happens to the guy? At that very moment when if she dies, so the guy, wherever he is, will experience a painful death as well. Okay? Let's say she's innocent. She's innocent. If she's innocent, then nothing will happen to her. But the niksav in Nizra Zera, she'll get a reward. If she was barren, she couldn't have children, so she'll have children. She'll have children now.
A son.
A son. Yeah, because a son is considered to be, that's what everybody wants, a son, because he studies Torah, he does mitzvahs, and so on and so forth. If she had children that weren't so healthy until now, this will be beautiful, healthy children. So my question was, why does she deserve a reward? Whatever she did, even if she's innocent, she didn't do the right thing. She carried on. She put herself in suspicion. She put herself in danger with another man. And all right, so for whatever reason, she didn't consummate it. But she deserves a reward for this. This comes there, a reward. So I wanted to, before we get into this topic over here, because it came up. So I wanted to give a shot. You see, there's a very big inyan over there in the Parsha of Sot. There's a very, very big inyan. Because the Kohen writes out the curse, the warnings, the curse, right? And it has the Shem Hashem, and it has God's name. Then they put it in water. They put that in, and it erases it. It erases it. So that's a very big avera to erase the name of God. But no, Hashem says, why?
Shalom bayis.
Because of Shalom bayis. To teach the significance, the ideal of Shalom bayis. Hashem is willing, so to speak, to allow his name to be erased, which is a terrible, terrible avera, because someone who erases the name of God, in a sense, he's like trying to get rid of God. He's trying to negate, right? He's trying to deny Hashem. But here, in this context, you do it. You're mitzvah, you have to do it. So I want to say that the women now, so sometimes, this is interesting, you see the ambivalent nature of a human being. That, she acted foolishly. whatever the problems were, it's not only her fault, the husband's fault too. If a woman is if a woman is dissatisfied, unhappy in the marriage, I mean, you can't just blame the woman. There's two sides to the story. It could be the husband's fault. He neglected her, whatever the case may be. So she acted out. She acted foolishly. She acted stupidly. And then he warned her, okay, which may not be the best thing. Because sometimes, Badafki, if you warn a person, now that you tell me I can't, if you tell a person they can't have something, so that sometimes you should, exactly. And she said, oh, I can't be with that guy. You're going to tell me I can't be with him? Oh, and you're, I'll be with him. So whether it's smart to warn a person not to be with a certain individual, I don't know. I'd be very careful about that. Sometimes sometimes it may work, but I'd be very careful about that. Anyway, she acted foolishly. But my opinion, she came to her senses. At the last, she didn't do it. Because you see the waters, she came out innocent. That means to say that she suddenly had a realization. She suddenly became mature. She realized what she's about to throw away. A marriage is a very, very serious inyan. I mean, I'm not talking to anybody. Whatever, it's a serious inyan. Now, maybe there was children, maybe there was a family. So she decided she's not going to do it. No, it's the wrong thing. She became mature. She was able to get over her resentments against her husband. But one second, but halacha says he's got to divorce her. Halacha says he's got to divorce her. I mean, sometimes you go too far. Okay, you threw the dice and now you got to pay the count. She said, no, I'm going to drink the water. To drink the water? Yeah, but you don't have to drink the water. By the way, it's a misnomer. Nobody ever forced a woman to drink the water. She's never obligated. That's purely a choice. If she's in that matzav where there was warning, and then there was seclusion, there was yichud, and she doesn't want to drink the water, no punishment. But the husband has to divorce her, and she loses her ksuba. Okay? That's the worst. But the Bezdin can't say, we're going to force you to drink. You can't force a person to drink. It's got to be through her and her husband. Both agree they want the test of the waters. You see? So she insisted on it. Why? She's willing to go through all of that humiliation in order to save. Just like the name of God is erased. She's willing to erase, you see? She's willing to erase her own dignity for the sake of restoring the marriage. Oh, so that means that she did tshuva. Tshuva is in the place where the Baal tshuva stands, the ordinary individual can't stand. She's willing, she's doing tshuva, and now she wants to reinstate, and she wants to save the marriage, and the bias, for that she gets it. That's my opinion. For that she deserves reward. You see? It's not like we think, it's true. It's true she acted foolishly, stupidly, and so on and so forth. But now she came back from that. She was able to overcome that and do tshuva. So I'm saying, Fadas, anyone speak Yiddish here? Fadas comes the aschar, a little reward. Okay, now let's get back to the topic. All right, it's the jump off point is this Chaim Walder. Now it turns out like this is what he's writing about. I didn't know the individual he writes for the Jerusalem Post. The weekend edition.
What's his name?
His name is Stuart Weiss.
Stuart Weiss, yeah.
The writer is director of the Jewish Outreach Center
Right.
of Ra'anana. Okay, fine. I don't know the person, but I read his articles. Good article. It's a good article, but we'll discuss it. I don't know if I agree. Okay, I'm not the kind of person who automatically agrees with everything this one says or that one says.
He's a rabbi.
Right. I don't disagree with him because he's a rabbi, but I analyze. See, when somebody tells me an idea, I don't just accept it. And even if it's because so-and-so said it, fine, I'll listen to it, but then I have to think it has to make sense to me. And it's not disrespectful to challenge or to question somebody's idea. The question is like this now. He wrote a lot of books, ironically for children's books, and it's very, very popular in Jewish households. It's tremendous. So now the question is, now that he's been exposed, okay, for what he allegedly did and so on and so forth.
People want to throw away the books now.
That's what I wanted to take up. But you'll see it manifests itself in a very fascinating discussion that predates it. So let me just read. I'm going to read some parts of the article with you. Perhaps this is one of the reasons why that many leaders in the Haredi world are slow in condemning Walder. Some of them are slow in condemning Walder, with some stubbornly refusing to believe that he possibly have been the monster that numerous testimonies make him out to be. You have different reactions. Some people simply, that's not true. It can't be, I know him. You could never do a thing like that. There are publications that glaringly omit the story of his apparent suicide, while others persist in claiming his innocence, even referring to him as a tzaddik, a righteous person unfairly maligned.
He condemned himself by committing suicide.
Well, again, you have to, I don't know all the particularities. Maybe he felt so, it could be that he felt so ashamed that there's no way I can get out of this. There was no waters he could drink. Sometimes that's, you see, the waters gave her an out. Maybe that woman who drank the water felt so humiliated and shamed she couldn't go on living. And she would commit suicide unless is there any way I could prove my innocence? See, the factor of shame is an extremely powerful thing. Very powerful. That's why a Musa Haskel, you're not allowed to embarrass somebody. Okay? Malbin pnei chaver barabim, Chazal say, Ein lo chelik le'olam haba. If you embarrass somebody publicly, you don't have a share in the world to come. Unless you do tshuva, by the way. Unless you do tshuva. Yeah, because the Rambam says
It's like killing somebody.
If you did it, you can't go bad.
you can do tshuva. The Rambam says, even the worst sinner, all of his life, okay, he doesn't have, if he did tshuva, even at the end of his life, in the last moments
The
of his
tshuva
life.
is valid only if he goes direct to the person he...
Correct. So why not? So
Okay.
you can do tshuva. Okay. No, I'm I'm mentioning it. But without tshuva, that's an aver, which that's why we have to be very careful how we speak to people. Okay, we have to be very, very careful.
Embarrass somebody, it's like killing them.
It's like killing them. Yeah, I'm just trying to show you the pain. That's why maybe he committed suicide. Because he's facing tremendous embarrassment. Even if you're innocent sometimes, there's no guarantee. You know, you could be portrayed a certain way. It's possible.
You remember there was a case some 12, 13 years ago in Kol Torah,
Kol Torah?
Yeshiva Kol Torah.
I wasn't here 12, 13 years ago.
Okay.
I'm an Ola Chadash. Okay? Now, let's go further. And then there are those who have gone the other way, removing his books from the shelves. That's the question. Forbidding their children from reading them, even burning them publicly and sharing the moment on video so that others might do the same. But then he asks his question. That's the question of this article. You probably can get the article online, okay? But let's stop for a moment and consider this. Are we required to negate and denigrate both the actions and the achievements of everybody who's outed, and everyone who's basically caught? Do their crimes unalterably obliterate their accomplishments? Does that mean that everything he did is no good now? Puzzle. And you can't read his books? Forget about it. You got to stamp him out, so to speak. Or no, we condemn his actions, okay, and so on and so forth. But if they're good books, why can't we read Can we read the books? Can we be nehane from the books, the teachings, and so on and so forth?
That's what the cancel culture does.
That's what?
The cancel culture.
Cancel culture. Well, okay. But they do it because they don't like, it's not that the person is a criminal. The cancel, as I understand the cancel culture, America has lost the idea of real debate and ideas. There's no ideas, it's all emotions. So if I'm opposed to this program, okay, I'm in favor of a free market solution as opposed to government, then I'm an evil, rotten person. You're a racist. There's no discussion anymore. I mean, America has really changed. Okay, I'm terrible. There used to be an ability to debate. There's such a thing as a debate. Today, there's no debates. It's all personal. Okay, I don't like your idea, therefore I don't like you, therefore you're a rotten person. That's it. Canceled. You know, and all the presidents and George Washington and all the guys before the Civil War that may have had slaves, canceled. That's it. Take down the statues. They didn't do any good whatsoever. They're all evil and so on. That's the approach in today's world. Okay, so let's pause for a second. You got to think about this intelligently and rationally. What is that? What side? Is that correct? In other words, if you have a bookstore, now that this has come out, that this individual is not what he was cracked up to be. Okay, he acted, played the role of a wonderful person who wants to help people and wants to help children. But it turned out that beneath the surface there was exploitation. You know, a lot of that is true. They say a lot of those who molest children, you'll find them that they're people who come out as being people that love children and they work in camps, right? Yeah.
Yeah, don't we also have the same discussion with Shlomo Karlbach?
Yeah. Okay, I'm familiar with Shlomo Karlbach. I've heard rumors again. I don't pursue those things. I don't know if it's true. You know, if I can give someone the benefit of the doubt, you know. But be the same. But all right, let's assume not him. Let's assume a certain singer who's very, very popular. Then it turns out that he did things that were kind of like, you know, very, very offensive.
But
Bill Cosby.
thousands of Haredi went to his grave and asked for forgiveness.
For what? For talking Lashon Hara?
Yeah.
Well, was it Lashon Hara? Was it true? I don't know. You shouldn't talk. Okay, fine. No. The fact that a person's a bad person doesn't mean you have a right to have Lashon Hara about it. That's Lashon Hara is Lashon Hara. But the question is that you're asking is, well, can I buy his tapes or his recordings and play them? And by the way, I don't know where you guys daven. You daven here Friday night? Chabad, you daven? Mm-hmm. Okay. Any shul that you go to for Kabbalah Shabbos on Friday night, it's all Karlbach. Not just a little. It used to be maybe a little Karlbach. No. Everything in the whole Kabbalah Shabbos is Karlbach.
It's Karlbach.
So, so nobody has any qualms about that. So let's ask the question: if you have a bookstore, do you have to get rid of his books? Okay, if you purchased his books, can you let your children read his books? I mean, once it's been discovered that you know, he's not a tzaddik, let's put it that way. So does his works become puzzle? Is there any problem buying his stuff, promoting his stuff? V'chuli. Okay, and then by extension, not just, I'm going to up the ante in a few minutes. I'm going to up the ante. I'm going to make it a more challenging question. I'm talking about on one level. This is one level. There's a different level. There's a historical precedent of tremendous significance that, you know, deals with this issue. See, I would say like this, in general terms, this is not a pashut, it's not a simple matter, because there's conflicting issues here. There's a conflict of interests. On the one hand, we don't want to lend credence to such a person, because in doing so, you're sort of diminishing the seriousness of what he did. Let's say there was a singer, nobody that we know, hypothetical, and he exploited women. Okay, but there are rabbis that have done that. Okay, were accused and they had to leave their positions, leave their jobs. Okay, see, because when you are a man, generally this is more, I think, men. When you are a man in a position of authority, and those who are underneath your jurisdiction are the opposite sex, there's a dangerous situation. See how the rabbis are very concerned about this stuff. That's why they have yichud. There's an issur of yichud. You can't be secluded with a woman. Why? Because slippery slope. The rabbis were very concerned that one thing leads to another. You want to understand Judaism, you have to understand one thing leads to another. So if you're having fleishiks over here and I'm having milachiks, we got a problem, right? We got to put something on there like this would be fine. This would be a reminder, because this is not going to not something you normally would put on a table. To remind, we are concerned that I may reach over, you know, oh, that looks, you see what I'm saying? And you can't have chicken. Can you have chicken with cheese? I don't know what it's called. Chicken cacciatore? I'm not a bucky in that. Are you allowed to have that? Because the Torah speaks about meat. Lo savashi el gedi b'chalei v'imo. A gedi is a kid, you know, you can't, but what about a chicken? The answer is minat Torah, chicken is, okay. Minat Torah. Chicken is okay with Minat Torah. You could have chicken with cheese. Minat Torah. The rabbis came along. The rabbis said no, usher. And truth of the matter is like this: you could have cream cheese with a meat meal, because it's you see, basar v'chalav, meat and milk in the Torah is only when it's cooked together. A piece of meat, like a cheeseburger. A cheeseburger would be a perfect example of that's the oraisa because it's cooked together. But if it's not, Minat Torah, I'm gonna be careful now. I'm not saying you can do these things. I'm just saying Minat Torah. If you had a piece of meat and then you had a milkshake, there's no avera. Because that's not meat and milk. You see, it's two separate entities. Look how far we've gone in terms of, and now who says you have to wait 6 hours, 3 hours, whatever your custom is to wait? I don't know how much 2 hours? 3. Okay. Who said, where does it say in the Torah that you have to wait 3 hours or 6 hours until you, between meat and milk? Where does it state? The answer is that's all midrabanan. All midrabanan. Why? Because one thing will lead to another thing before you know it. He's going to be over. He's going to violate the Dioraisa. Interesting thing. You see how the Torah is so concerned that one thing leads to another? And the same thing is true by the sexual area. So now it turns out, once they made a halacha of yichud, it doesn't, see, that's how halacha works. It doesn't restrict itself just to a case where there's an actual danger. Okay? In other words, it's not only a case of a young guy and a young, beautiful girl. So they're alone. They're driving on a country road. There's nobody around. That's genuinely, I understand that. That's dangerous. But now it doesn't matter, even to the extent that even if the guy is very old or the woman is very old, there's no sexual attraction whatsoever, still you can't, because that's yichud. In other words, it doesn't differentiate according to this case or that case. It's across the board. It's a man with a woman who's prohibited to him. So even though there's absolutely no chance of any kind of a encounter, it can be a little bit of a problem for a frum businessman. Sometimes you have to do business in an office building or something like that with a woman, and there's nothing at all there. But in terms of temptation, Okay, so you have two things now. You have the need not to give any credibility to this person. So by buying his books and reading his books, you're going to praise the author. So then, and the same thing is true with that singer you're talking about. The more they sing his songs at Kabbalah Shabbat, what? This man did such and such, and by singing his songs, you're praising him. You're saying he's a good person, a holy person. So that's the problem. And in doing that, you're diminishing the nature of the avera that he did. It's not such a bad avera. If he can be sung and he's celebrated, then he's a good guy. You see, that's the danger. On the other hand, the question is like this though. But what about the benefit and the value of the things that he produced? Okay, let's say the books. If the books are really valuable and helpful and so on and so forth, why should we be deprived?
By not selling or buying the books, you're not hurting him. You're hurting the people that who bought the books to sell them.
Okay, that's a separate issue. Okay, let's assume they haven't bought them yet and they're about to buy them. Okay, they want to buy them.
I think a parent should read the books to see if it has anything in there that might.
Well, the books themselves are not harmful. No, the books were legitimate books. They weren't harmful. In fact, they were liked. I asked because the women in my class, they have children, and the children read those books. And they say the kids love the books. It's interviews with children and asking them questions and their ability to become honest and that whole thing.
I think it would be stupid for them not to continue.
But you're giving credibility to someone who did terrible things.
So what? He's not alive. What's the difference? He's not going to get the credit.
Well, he will get the credit. Yeah, well, certainly he will. I mean, people will say he's a wonderful author. He's a great man. So, see, that's the danger. Let me take it to an extreme case, though.
Spinoza.
I don't know. Well, before we get to Spinoza, this is something which is relatively very, very recent. The Nazis. This question comes up with regard to the Nazis. Okay? And the Nazis, as we said, they conducted experiments. They conducted experiments of the most hideous kind on living human beings. Let me read this to you. Okay? He says, many of the most powerful and penetrating cases in recent history came in the aftermath of the Holocaust. Nazi scientists used countless inmates of concentration camps as human guinea pigs in conducting grotesque medical or psychological experiments. One of the experiments was their attempt to determine how long people could survive in situation of extreme cold, hypothermia. Because, you know, if Nazi pilots fell into the ocean, or the sailors, etc., and they were rescued, so they had to revive them from hypothermia. So they did experiments on Jews, subjecting them to extreme cruelty. Okay? One of these experiments was their attempt to determine how long people could survive in situations of extreme cold. Their purpose ostensibly was to establish the most effective treatment for victims of immersion hypothermia, particularly crew members of the German Luftwaffe, who had been shot down into the cold waters of the North Sea. Inmates, these are Jewish inmates, were held for hours in tanks of bitterly cold water, or left standing naked in freezing weather. Some were frozen to death in attempts to learn just how much cold a human being could endure before expiring. So they let them die. Others were pulled out before they died in order to see how can I revive them. Others were brought near to death, then subjected to warming techniques such as hot baths or body heat transfers from female prisoners to assess the possibility of recovery. Okay? Now let's just say that, and these were all kinds of experiments. All of them were sadistic and torturing and it's cruel, unimaginably cruel. But let's say as a result of these experiments, they did discover valid types of information on how to cure and so on and so forth. Well, let's say they discovered a cure. Okay, let's say they discovered a cure that could cure people, as cruel as it may be. Are we permitted to make use of what they did as a result of the sadistic torturing of fellow Jews? Are we allowed to be nana from that? You follow? That's the question. So let me read a little bit further, and then we'll discuss it. I want to hear your opinion on this. See, here it's not so simple, like, what do I care about his name if he has a good name? No, Shem Rishayim Yirkav. You have to destroy. Timcha Zecher Amalek. You have to obliterate the memory of Amalek. That means to constantly remind people of their evil and give them names. Give them names that are shameful from them. You have to do this. Why? Because the world has to learn about the nature of the evil and uproot it. The world still hasn't learned. You see all the anti-Semitism, how prevalent it still is. Just had that case, when was that case? With that Reformed rabbi? Where was that? Texas, was it? Texas. Mm-hmm. Texas, right? That's the latest. He writes about it in today's paper, Shmuley Boteach. Because they're denying that it's anti-Semitic. You hear the FBI, the guy who was in charge of the rescue operation, it had nothing to do with really, it had nothing to do with, it wasn't because they were Jews.
Which is unbelievable.
Yeah, well, read Shmuley Boteach's article. That's today's Jewish. I didn't bring it, I don't think I brought it with me. Now listen, after the war there was an acrimonious debate about using this information, which was deemed, precisely because its cruel disregard for the victims, to be more accurate than any other existing data on the subject. It turns out that the data that the Germans discovered was more accurate than anybody else. Hello? Right? Now the question is, what do we do with that? Are we permitted to use it? Thereby giving credit to the Nazis. The Nazis, look, Nazism isn't so bad. Look what they did.
So I guess it's to say there's good contained even within evil.
Well, let me finish. We'll talk about it. Some argued in the interest of science and for the good of humanity that it should be used. That it was critical in the effort to improve methods of reviving people rescued from freezing water after boat accidents. Others, see, there was two positions. Others, appalled by the source of the material, would have no part of it. The New England Journal of Medicine, for example, refused to publish the data openly, on principle. So now my question is like this: what do you say? Then he takes up the question: what's the standpoint of Judaism? Okay, I don't know if I'll have enough time to get into that because I don't agree with a lot of his arguments. But forget about that. At this point in time, let's assume that they have discovered, whether it's hypothermia, let's assume they've discovered a cure for certain forms of cancer, of lethal cancer. What are we supposed to do? Squelch that? Because it's tainted. You know, you had that phenomenon of tainted information. According to an American law, I think it's the Miranda, right? If you, a lot of lawyers exploit this, if you did not have the proper search warrant, okay, and nevertheless you went into the guy's house and you searched, and you found evidence that this guy can't do anything to him, which I think is crazy. I think it's crazy because you should be penalized. What's the difference how you obtained if it's true though. If this guy's a murderer, he's a murderer. The fact that I shouldn't have climbed in the window and gotten the information.
It's not the same example.
It's not.
No?
No.
Why?
First of all, by law itself, even in our law, it's written, tzedek tzedek tirdof. You must use proper means.
I agree.
But
I agree.
for what is relative to the medicine, you have to use it. In order to save lives, you use it.
Ah, okay. But it is this, I think it's a similar idea. In other words, the information is the information. Truth is the truth. This proves that he killed him. The fact that I didn't have a right to go in there, I should be penalized, but that doesn't exonerate him. He's still the murderer. You know what I'm saying? How do you let the murderer go free?
But there's a certain process in proving guilt.
I know that there's a process, but as I said, it should not, in my opinion, it shouldn't be structured that way. In other words, we have a rule that in order to, you need a warrant. You need a warrant. Good. This guy's went ahead and did without a warrant. They should be penalized. But society shouldn't be penalized. As a result of going in without a warrant, they discovered who the murderer is.
Society would be penalized by expanding the slippery slope.
Rabbi,
And saying that we can just
I'm not saying you
ignore the
can
laws.
do it. I'm saying you penalize the guy. I don't know what you do. You can
if
disqualify.
you use improper means, it's like an ed sheker.
A what?
Ed sheker.
A checker. No, it's not the same as an A checker. A checker is punished. Yeah, A checker is punished. I agree
But-
they should be punished.
But the culprit is because innocent.
That's because there was no aid. This is not
Because
aid.
the aid was
You're confusing one thing with another. The evidence is good evidence. It's solid. The fact that it wasn't obtained properly doesn't change the nature of the evidence.
But it does.
No, I'm not. I'm arguing against that. I'm saying it shouldn't. If I'm sure. I know what the law is. I agree. I don't agree with the law. However, an aid checker is someone who's not qualified to testify. Therefore, there's no testimony. There's no testimony. Of course, the case is thrown out.
if you give permit to use it, what has been done out of the law, it will repeat itself and repeat itself.
Only if there's no consequences. But there could be other consequences. In other words, like this, again, we have two objectives over here. We want the law enforcement officers to follow the rules. Okay, if they don't follow the rules, they will get severely penalized. At the same time, we want the murderer to be caught and taken off the street. You're saying, let this guy, the murderer, let him go, let him kill other people. Why? Because that officer didn't observe the rules. To me, that doesn't make sense.
This is the reason why they use this law, because it's a mean to stop.
There's other means, and that means is at the price of society. You have an obligation to protect society from murderers. We know who the murderer is, okay? We know he's a serial killer. We know he's going to kill other people, but we can't do anything because you shouldn't have gone in there without a warrant. To me, that doesn't make sense. Anyway, let's get back to the topic. Think about it. I think about what you say. You can think about what I say, okay? All right? I think out my positions. That doesn't mean I'm right, but there's something to think about in what I say. I want to get back to the case of the Nazis, and I think there's an important point over here. You see, because let's say there's somebody who needs that. Let's say there's somebody who's sakana, he's not. Let's say here's a nice theme for a movie. We'll put together, you guys want to make a movie? We'll make a big hit. We'll all become famous movie producers. Let's say the guy who's dying and needs that cure is a Jew, is a Holocaust survivor. He's a survivor of the Holocaust, and in order to save his life now, you have to make use. He's one of the guys they experimented on, or whatever the case may be. I just like to up the ante to make it. Okay, the question is, if we make use of this, see, the New England Journal says, no, I'm not even going to publish it. then if we use it, we're sort of giving a certain amount of glory to Nazis. There's still Nazi lovers, right? There's what we call neo-Nazis in the world. The Nazis didn't die. They didn't go away. They're still here. They're not at the same level of power that under Hitler, but they could, because the circumstances in the world that produce Nazism are getting more favorable to producing Nazism, as you know. Okay? On the other hand, it's pikuach nefesh. This guy is going to die. We could save him. Okay? So
I think you have to ask him if he wants to.
I don't know about this. Yeah, but we can't.
Call it, you can't.
You can use the proper mean to save a life.
Okay. In my opinion, I tend to, on that I agree. Two things. See, it's not really Nazi truth. Truth is truth. Okay? The truth is the truth, no matter who discovers it. It could be discovered by a good person. It could be discovered by an evil person. But once it's discovered, it's something that's separate from the person who discovered it. That's truth. If that's the emes. So the emes is, if you put together these two the ingredients and chemicals, you get a cure. We have no right to take that truth away from this person. We have an obligation of pikuach nefesh. The obligation of pikuach nefesh, you see, even if you're going to give some credit to a Nazi, which is a bad thing to do, because you got to fight against Nazism. See, I told you this is what I would do if I was in charge. This is how the world would look if I was in charge of the world. Okay? I'm just going to give you an inkling. What I would do is, let's assume I'm the president of the United States, whatever, and this case is in the papers, headlines, because there's all different kinds of factions. Some people are totally against, you can't do that, you can't give any credit. I would say like this, on the one hand, we have an obligation to save life. And that's what we're going to do. On the other hand, this should be an occasion to renew our understanding how evil it was. How did this come about? I would say this is how it came about, through these tortures. Through these inhumane experiments on humans. Everybody has an obligation to remember, to study that and to condemn it. So why can't you have both? Why can't you, let me finish my point. Why can't you have both? Why can't you get the benefit of this medicine and save the guy, and at the same time use it as an occasion to further make people aware of this, the ultimate evil of Nazism? Why can't you do both? That's my question. Go ahead. Yaakov, Mayor.
No, I had another one. I had the point that even the stories of Elisha ben Abuya are reported. They have not been cancelled.
Right.
So you can be a Russia.
Well, you can be a Russia, but generally you condemn a Russia. You condemn a Russia, and you don't want to.
But you don't.
So you're not nene.
You know that erase the story.
You know that you're not nene from the tikrovis of avodah zarah. Okay. You can't be nene. Let's say they're burning incense to their idol, an avodah zarah. You like it, okay? Can you go to these churches because they have beautiful architecture, okay, and beautiful art, and you love it? You're not going there for religious purposes. Can you be nene from the architecture, from the art of and the music? The music. Wagner, right? Can you go there? I'd like to hear the music. Are you allowed to or not? Who knows? You know.
We have in the Talmud the story of Jesus.
In the what?
In the Talmud there is a story of Jesus.
Right.
So,
no, but I'm saying, you answer my question, can you be nene from the works, the music, the compositions of Christianity? The answer is no. Very, very machmir. You're not allowed to, because that's Makari view. You see, again, one thing leads to another. It's very powerful formulation in Judaism. Yes, if you start going to the church on Sunday because you love the hymns, the gospels, the singing, and you are slowly but surely, unconsciously getting closer and closer to Christianity. That religion fascinates me. I find it fascinating because it has such beauty, such harmony, and so on and so forth. That is taking you away from Torah, So you can't just dismiss this by being nene from the product of Ovdei Avodah Zarah. You're diminishing yourself in terms of your basic beliefs. And the beliefs of Christianity are not going to sound so terrible to you.
Excuse me,
Anymore.
I think that ideas and facts are two different things. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov used to say, in the world of ideas,
Yeah.
you can say whatever you want, even the most incredible thing, as long as you don't change halacha. So the world of ideas,
I'm not sure which kind of ideas are you talking about.
any idea, even ideas of Avodah Zarah, as long as you don't change the halacha, you don't say that something the halacha is wrong, you can say in the world of ideas whatever.
I don't know about that. What if you believe in the Trinity or something like that?
No, not to believe in the Trinity,
So
but
that's an idea.
to study what Trinity means for them, which
The Rambam says the Rambam
Rambam
says,
did study.
oh, but he himself says, does the Rambam, that you're not allowed to study. Listen carefully, I'm not finished. You're not allowed to read the works of the Avodah Zarah because you could be drawn after them, unless you're reading their books in order to learn how to refute them. That's different. The Rambam was on that. Everybody's on that level. The Rambam was on the level. He studied all the works. He knew all the works of all the Avodah Zarah that ever existed, and it was very important because he used that. In fact, he said he learned the meaning of many mitzvahs. Many mitzvahs, because the rationale behind the mitzvah was to counter that Avodah Zarah. So once he was aware of the Avodah Zarah, he was able to understand. But also he was able to refute. The Ramban had that debate, the famous debate.
Barcelona.
In Barcelona. He ripped him to shreds. I mean, unfortunately.
But he knew what he was
He
thinking.
knew. They couldn't stand up. They couldn't stand up. He had to leave the country. That's why he came to
He
Eretz
got
Israel.
100 pieces of gold from the king.
Yeah, the king became an admirer. By the way, did you see that there is a video?
No.
Very, very well
I've
done.
been told about the video.
I saw it. I don't know if I don't think I still have it.
In what language is it?
In English.
I haven't seen it.
And I think it was excellently the one who portrayed the Ramban. If you can get a hold of it, ask the OU. They probably or the OU or Rabbi
It's
Goldberg.
called disposition.
Who?
It's called a disposition.
The disputation.
The disputation.
Yes, disputation. Go online. You probably could find it. Actually, you could have one session. We could watch it. Somebody could set it up. Rabbi Goldberg or Rabbi Diamond, they can set it up. We'll watch the. I showed it in my shul, both in Plainview and then in Phoenix. You know, we had different occasions. It was very well received. It was very, very interesting because the Ramban was amazing. The
Yes.
one who portrayed him.
It's a movie of 1986.
Okay. You got it already? You found it?
Yes, I got it, but now I have to see if there is on YouTube.
Oh, on YouTube. Can be. You see? So I'm saying like this, to get back to this topic, that this is how I would resolve. If somebody has done heinous crimes, you see, like the Nazis, their musical compositions, their artwork, their architecture, okay, that should be banned. That's part of the ban. See, the way I look at it, you may not agree with me. Pretty sure you won't agree with me. Even works of art, I think works of art are overrated. You know how much millions of dollars people will pay for a work of art? I mean, can you tell me, what is that? What is in a work? I don't care if it's a good piece of art. The Mona Lisa, nicht the Mona Lisa. Who cares? What is it that's of such tremendous... Are you kidding me? I have a copy of the Moreh Nevuchim of the Rambam, okay? And what did it cost? $15, whatever. It's life. You carry it around with you. You learn, you study. It's such beneficial stuff, and it's only $15. A picture? First of all, today, a lot of these pictures, you can't even see anything, right?
There is on YouTube.
Ah, great. So maybe you can download, you can get it. I tell you, if you don't want to, you don't want to. But it was very, very interesting. Oh, shalom, we were waiting for you. How you doing? Okay?
I'm cold.
Yeah, it's cold outside.
So I was here.
I saw you before.
I was here before me.
I mentioned, you see, remember I mentioned,
Oh.
where is it? I mentioned
I
you.
was outside, having a cigarette.
Oh, okay.
What's a long cigarette?
Yeah, that's a long cigarette. It's a long cigarette. You probably forgot to light it. You forgot to light it, so it
It was
lasted.
a pipe.
Fine. Anyways, you see, this is the way I resolve the issue. If there's no real need or benefit for the product, I don't need this composition. Maybe it's good music, but the world is not going to lose anything if we don't have it. And by having it, it's going to promote, the Nazis will get a better, like people are going to admire, oh, look what they produced. Look at this great music. Don't have it. Okay? It's music. It's just music. There's other music. Who cares? It's not going to save a life. It's not that important. Overrated. The same thing with great art. You like great art, fine, but it's not going to make a difference to the world. So why would you take art from the Nazis and show it, and this gives credibility and prestige to the Nazis? You see, but when it comes to this case of Pikuach Nefesh, if it's a scientific discovery which can help mankind, it's a scientific discovery which can cure illnesses, that's something else. Then we have to have a different solution. And the solution is to use it to save the life and use it as an opportunity to teach people about how evil they were. People don't know about these experiments. Not everybody knows about the Nazi. Today the world has forgotten. The children are not being educated with a proper understanding of history. It's ridiculous. Especially with this woke. Everything is woke, and it's all about politics. Everything is about white privilege. That's all it is, and nobody really studies. Certainly they don't study the history of anti-Semitism. The anti-Semitism is making a comeback, as you see, right? You see it, okay? The incidences in America of all, in general, when they talk about racism and hatred, etc., it's always presented as though it's the blacks. The blacks are the victims, and so on and so forth. But the truth of the matter is, today in America, the biggest victims of racism, you call it racism, whatever you want to call it, anti-Semitism, in other words, baseless hatred. Because the hatred of the Jews is basically baseless. There's no justification at all. Very hard thing to even understand why people always hate the Jews. Okay, there's a big envy factor, all right? But the Jews are the ones who suffer the most from this. You see, that's why there is a need to educate. People have to be educated, children, about what happened in history and what it can lead to. And the phenomenon of Nazism can never, ever be forgotten. You see, that's why I say it's very significant, this discussion, to benefit from the products, okay, the successful products that evil people have developed. You can't give it any credibility. You take it off the shelves. I don't care. In the world, again, the world is, so you don't have this piece of art. So you don't have that book. You don't have that musical composition. Who cares? It's not a matter of life and death. All things being equal, it's nice to have some culture, enjoy the culture. If it's decent, enjoy. But not at the expense of giving credibility to Nazis. Their name has to be completely uprooted. However, as we said, if it's a matter of life and death where you can save lives, they discovered things in the most vicious and cruel ways. But they did discover things that are essential to curing a certain disease and saving a life. Then you have to do it. In my opinion, you save the life, pikuach nefesh, you save the life, and use that as an opportunity to teach the world about the evil that they did. You see, that's my resolution of this question that he raises pertaining to that whole issue.
What does the author say?
I'm sorry?
What does the author say?
Well, that's part 2 of the article, which I didn't get around to. It's not so simple. Okay, I don't know if I'll do I need more time. This was I want you to read the article, really, because he then brings up, I'm going to disagree with him a lot. He brings up a number of cases from the Torah, and he's using it as an example that there's no one is perfect, there's good, there's bad. I don't know exactly what he's saying, okay? I wanted to discuss that part, but I don't have any time, okay, because I've used up my time. I want to thank you. This is a very, very, very stimulating, very interesting discussion. I'm glad we took it up. And look, think about these issues. You have a right to your, your own thinking, your own opinion on the topic.